Thank you, guys. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. Really appreciate it. Before we start, I got a little joke. A homosexual, a Muslim, and a communist walk into a bar. And the bartender says, "Hello, Mr. Obama, what can I get you?" I thought it was funny. And I can't use it at churches, so I got to use it at political groups. All right, guys, so they asked me to talk about the central bank digital currencies. Now, I don't know if you guys have been following this. Donald Trump pushed pause on it, but the threat remains, and unfortunately, most Americans are totally clueless. Now, they first started publicly talking about this when they announced the Great Reset back in the summer of 2020. You might remember the height of COVID hysteria. This was actually when they announced the Great Reset. This is the guy who made it public to the world, Klaus Schwab. He's just recently been wheeled off stage left. But here he is talking about some important things.
But we have another choice. We can build a new social contract, particularly integrating the next generation. We can change our behavior to be in harmony with nature again. And we can make sure that the technologies of the fourth industrial revolution are best utilized to provide us with better lives. In short, we need a great reset.
All right, so we need a great reset for the post-corona era, new systems, and it's going to drop a really important clue here that we'll come back to.
The COVID-19 crisis has shown us that our old systems are not fit anymore for the 21st century. Now is the historical moment, the time, not only to fight the virus, but to shape the system for the need for the post-corona era.
We need a great reset. Okay, all right, very good. Now, did you hear what he said? We're going to make sure the technologies of the fourth industrial revolution. We're going to come back to that, so just keep it in the back of your mind. Now, one of the amigos who showed up to announce the Great Reset to the world was Kristalina Georgieva. She is the head of the International Monetary Fund. Her real name was actually Stalina Georgieva, but comes from a communist family. They renamed her Kristalina after Stalin fell out of favor.
History would look at this crisis as the great opportunity for reset.
It's a great opportunity for reset, right? We're going to skip a lot because there's so much to go through, and I don't want to go more than 8 hours. I think is the limit you said, right? So we'll let Bill Clinton introduce our next guest here.
And then, as a student at Georgetown, I heard that call clarified by a professor named Carroll Quigley.
Carroll Quigley was actually a really important guy. He very much saw himself as part of the deep state. He was quite proud of it. He said he agreed with their goals. And the one thing he didn't agree with, he said, was that they wanted to be secret. And he thought that they ought to be known. So he wrote a book and he kind of exposed the whole game plan. It's called Tragedy and Hope. It's actually very interesting. He says the powers of financial capitalism had another far-reaching aim, nothing less than a world system of financial control in private hands, able to dominate the political system of each country and the economy of the world as a whole. Mind you, this is coming from somebody who agrees with this system. He said the system would be controlled in a feudalist fashion. You might remember right before they announced the Great Reset, they put out that famous video, "You will own nothing by 2030 and you'll be happy and you're going to have to rent everything." Do you remember feudalism from like 4th grade history class? You own nothing. Right? You depend on the generosity of your lord or your baron or whatever, and as long as you hand over 50% of your crops and 50% of your children and 50% of your livestock, then you can be happy. So this new system, he said, was going to be controlled in a feudalist fashion by the central banks of the world acting in concert through secret meetings and conferences. Maybe if I come back again, we'll get into some of these secret meetings and conferences. We don't have time for them today. But he says the apex of the system was the Bank for International Settlements, a private bank owned and controlled by the world's central banks, which were themselves private corporations. So we're going to come back to this Bank for International Settlements. It's very important. But these technologies of the fourth industrial revolution that Klaus Schwab mentioned, everything from AI to quantum computing to nanobots, synthetic biology, some of it gets really weird. We're going to focus today in particular on some of the surveillance technology that they're developing. Bill Gates of hell calls it the digital public infrastructure.
Digital public infrastructure.
Yeah, so digital public infrastructure. And there are several components to this. One of the main ones is digital currency. There's also digital ID. and there's also the digital financial system that brings it all together. So we'll look a little bit at each of those. But just so you know, the Federal Reserve was one of the leading forces pushing central bank digital currencies under the last administration. In fact, the administration put out an executive order right after Biden took office saying they placed the highest urgency on developing and deploying a U.S. central bank digital currency. The IMF said we're working on a global central bank digital currency. And the Uniform Law Commission, a very obscure, any lawyers in the room might have heard of it, they came up with changes to what's called the Uniform Commercial Code so that they could bring this digital currency in through the back door in every one of our 50 states. The Uniform Commercial Code, they try to harmonize the business and commercial laws across the country. And so they redefined money. Now, twice, you remember during the crazy Corona absurdity where you could go to the weed store, you could go to the alcohol shop, you could go abort your babies, you could go to Walmart, but you couldn't go to church. Apparently that wasn't essential. You couldn't go to work if you were a small business owner, right? They said, oh, we shut down your whole economy, but don't worry, we're going to give you free money. Well, twice the Democrats put in that so-called stimulus bill digital dollars. They were going to give you your stimulus money in digital dollars. Now, the Republicans took it out before it finally passed, but Central bank digital currency is already here. In fact, less than 100 miles from where I live is a little country called the Bahamas. They already have CBDCs. They call it the sand dollar. Jamaica, not too much further, they're telling you, this is the Prime Minister talking about what's coming.
In the coming weeks and days, I'll be making certain announcements regarding the acceleration of Jamaica's intention to become a fully digital society. We are well on our way to this. We have established the national identification system. We have put in place our digital currency. We have given directions to our ministries to digitalize their operations. Most of our ministries are now moving from paper-based systems to digital systems. Our military is transitioning. The society is moving very quickly, very rapidly to become digital. Our banking consumers are seeing it as well because the banks are moving very rapidly to digital. You have something now called artificial intelligence. Very soon this position of a human being exchanging cash and so on, that is going to disappear from the banking system very soon. And you are going to have to interface with machines. I don't want it to be a scary thought, but it is a thought that we all have to embrace.
All right, you better get busy embracing, okay? Now, this is all over the world, right? It's like everybody all over the world suddenly woke up and said, we don't need cash anymore, let's just have digital currency, right? The Ukrainians are working on it, the Russians are doing it. I actually first exposed this 15 years ago when the Canadian Central Bank started creating the mint chip, the digital currency. This is their video, not mine. In the interest of time, I won't show it all to you. But Communist China is actually leading the way. The World Economic Forum, we just met Klaus Schwab, says 98% of the governments and central banks in the world are moving toward central bank digital currency. And guess who's leading the way? You remember where the apex of the neo-feudalistic global control system was going to be, according to our friend Carol Quigley? The Bank for International Settlements. That's who's coordinating the global transition toward central bank digital currencies. This is the guy who runs it. His name is Agustin Cartens. And remarkably honest about what this means. Listen.
Our analysis on CBDC, in particular for the use of general use, we tend to establish the equivalence with cash, and there is a huge difference there. For example, in cash, we don't know, for example, who's using a $100 bill today. We don't know who is using a 1,000 peso bill today. A key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability. And also we will have the technology to enforce that. Those two issues are extremely important, and that makes a huge difference with respect to what cash is.
So he said some really important things right there, right? Right now, you can just walk into a store with a $100 bill, a 1,000 peso bill. You can buy whatever you want. Nobody's going to know. You have privacy, which is kind of nice. Once you have the CBDC, that's gone. Every transaction you make will be, first of all, you'll need permission for it. Second of all, it'll be tracked. It'll be registered in a database. It'll be available to AI. It will be part of a profile that they're already building on you. Second of all, he said something even more creepy. He said central banks will have absolute control over how you use the expressions of central bank liability, how you use your CBDCs. And he's not kidding. They will have absolute control. And they're bragging about this. Here's an Ivy League professor talking about what they might do with this technology.
If you think about the benefits of digital money, there are huge potential gains. It's not just about digital forms of physical currency. You can have programmability, units of central bank currency with expiry dates. You could have, as I argue in my book, a potentially better and some people might see it, or a darker world where the government decides that units of central bank money can be used to purchase some things, but not other things that it deems less desirable, like, say, ammunition or drugs or pornography or something of the sort. And that is very powerful in terms of the use of a CBDC.
Yeah, I'll say that's pretty powerful to be able to tell people what they can and can't buy. Oh, you've been a bad slave. You cannot have any ammunition. You've been tithing at a conservative Bible-believing church. You can't have any more steak. You've drastically exceeded your carbon budget for the month. You see where this is going, ladies and gentlemen? And by the way, it's not just a wacky Ivy League professor at the World Economic Forum. This is the guy at the International Monetary Fund who is doing this at the international level. Listen.
Potential value for everyone to use it. And finally, the third way we think CBDC can improve financial inclusion is through what we call programmability. That is, CBDC can allow government agencies and private sector players to program.
It's going to allow government agencies to program your currency.
Those money can be precisely targeted for what kind of people can own and what kind of use this money can be utilized.
The money can be precisely targeted. We can determine who can own it, what they can use it on. Imagine this technology in the wrong hands. And it's in the wrong hands, trust me. Here's another World Economic Forum honcho.
But very, very specific. This specific brand, even the specific batch of this, if we link that with, AI technology and then big data and particularly Internet of Things, there are ways for us to come up with instant measurement and reporting of the carbon footprint. I hope that through this we can help people to really make different choices.
They're going to help you make different choices, okay? Here's the guy at Alibaba, the Chinese Amazon.
We're developing, through technology, an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? That's, where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So, individual carbon footprint tracker.
And by the way, this is already here, right? I got off the plane on the Arabian Peninsula a few years ago. I was going to the UN Climate Clown Show. And as soon as I got off the plane, there's a big billboard by MasterCard. Now tracking your individual carbon footprint. Oh, you have drastically exceeded your budget, sir. I'm sorry. Now, some of you are thinking, wow, that's just for the slaves in communist China. No, this is the Federal Reserve, April of 2024, say, oh, we can use CBDC programmability to determine where your money can be spent. Okay. The Biden White House, in their policy objectives for a CBDC, said it needs to facilitate transactions with the global financial system, and it needs to be used to advance racial equity and environmental priorities. What does that even mean? Right? It means they're going to control where and how and when and if you spend your money. This is Pippa Malmgren. She's speaking at the World Government Summit just a few years ago, giving you some insight into where all this is going.
What underpins a world order is always the financial system. I was very privileged. My father was an advisor to Nixon when they came off the gold standard in '71, and so I was brought up with a kind of inside view of how very important the financial structure is to absolutely everything else. And what we're seeing in the world today, I think, is we are on the brink of a dramatic change where we are about to, and I'll say this boldly, we're about to abandon the traditional system of money and accounting and introduce a new one. And the new one, the new accounting, is what we call blockchain. It means digital. It means having a almost perfect record of every single transaction that happens in the economy, which will give us far greater clarity over what's going on.
A new system of money and accounting that's going to give them total clarity about what's going on. And by clarity, they mean you have no more privacy. Everything you do will be tracked, monitored, ranked. Just like in China, you get a social credit score. If you're a good slave, you get some extra privileges. If you're a bad slave, you might find yourself in a camp being re-educated. If that doesn't work, they have ways to deal with you. Now, we met Agustin Cartens earlier. He's very boring to listen to, so I'm not going to bore you with this whole thing. But I do want you to hear what he's saying, because this is unbelievably important. They are building the architecture of a global digital gulag, a global panopticon. And what he's going to explain to you, I'll let you do it himself. They're talking about exactly what Pipa Malmgren just explained. A global blockchain system where every asset in the known universe is going to become a token. And it's going to live on this digital blockchain. Every farm, every car, every house, every toothbrush, everything. If you want to buy it or sell it, you got to interact with this digital blockchain. You can only interact with the blockchain using your biometric digital ID and your central bank digital currency. So if you will not participate in this, you will not eat, you will not buy, you will not sell. You will be excluded from every element of society. That's how they plan to enforce compliance. I'll let him talk about this. If it gets too boring, just let me know and we'll move on. But
around the world, central banks are exploring how to give money new capabilities. The BIS is supporting much of this work as it incubates projects and catalyzes new ideas in the world of central banking. This includes work on central bank digital currencies at both wholesale and retail levels, as well as fast payment systems and their interlinkages across borders. We're also experimenting with the tokenization of different assets, including tokenized deposits. But to fully realize the transformative potential of these new financial technologies, we need some way to bring them all together. In this regard, there is a great promise in developing the idea of a unified ledger with a common programming environment. A unified ledger is a digital infrastructure with the potential to combine the monetary system with other registries of real and financial claims. It would need to be a public-private partnership with a clear division of roles.
this is the Financial Times, not exactly a fringe right-wing newspaper, and they actually just said a few years ago that what their CBDC research and experimentation shows is that it's going to be nigh on impossible to issue these digital currencies outside of what they're calling a comprehensive national digital ID management system. They say this means CBDCs will be tied to personal accounts that include personal data, credit history, and other forms of information. How many of you are familiar with the Communist Chinese social credit system? Okay, not enough of you. So I first exposed this in 2015. It's basically the pilot program that they're going to use on the whole world. They take hundreds of data points on every one of the 1.3 billion slaves to find out whether they're good slaves or bad slaves. Who do you talk to on social media? Have you ever searched for something you're not supposed to search for on a search engine? Did you ever type in Tiananmen Square? Do you keep your phone charged? Have you ever been caught jaywalking? All of this goes into this system and gives you a score. If your score is good, you're good. You could be a member of the Communist Party, you could send your kids to a nice school, you can get a passport, you could travel overseas, you're trustworthy. If your score is bad, and by the way, just knowing people who have a bad score takes your score down. If your score is bad, your privileges go away. You can't even get on a train. And if it gets really bad, you're clearly one of those subversives, and they will literally put you in a re-education camp. And if it's still really bad, I don't know if you guys follow CCP very much, they'll lay you on an operating table, chop your organs out, and sell them to the highest bidder. Okay? That's the kind of monsters that we are dealing with. And I think Americans have this idea that that could never happen here because we're America. Yeah. Well, Speaking of the West, this just happened last week. I don't know if you guys watched Glenn Beck. I went on his show last week to break this down. It's a very, very significant threat. Here's the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, the flaming communist, Keir Starmer. Listen.
Today, I am announcing this government will make a new free-of-charge digital ID mandatory for the right to work by the end of this Parliament. Let me spell that out. You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID. It's as simple as that.
You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you don't have a digital ID. And it's quite ironic. They're packaging this as a solution to the mass illegal immigration that they have encouraged. You know what's funny? The first time I wrote an article about this system in 2010, they were proposing it for the United States. It was Lindsey Graham teamed up with Chucky Schumer and Barack Obama. Said every American, if you want to work, needs a biometric digital social security card. You know what was also in the legislation? Gramnesty. Amnesty for 20 million illegal immigrants. It has nothing to do with illegal immigration. They're the ones who mass imported millions of illegals into our countries on purpose. This is not going to solve that problem. They wanted that problem. Here's the European Union. This came out recently. They're not only doing a digital ID, but you're going to get a digital wallet as well. And in your digital wallet, you'll put your central bank digital currencies. You think, well, that's those Europeans. It's coming here too, right? Bunch of states already have digital ID program. Now, they're voluntary for now. Just like the tyranny always is. It starts voluntary, but it won't be for long. And here's the Queen of the Netherlands. If we can hear this, I'll let it play. She's explaining what you will need your digital ID for.
Why? Because in order to open an account, you need to have an ID.
Right.
And I have to say that when I started this job, there were actually very little countries in Africa or Latin America that had one ubiquitous type of ID, and certainly that it was digital, and certainly that it was biometric. And we've really worked with all our partners to actually help that being, to grow this. And the interesting part of it is that, yes, it is very necessary for financial services, but not only.
So,
it's also good for school enrollment. It's also good for health, who actually got a vaccination or not. It's very good to actually to get your subsidies, from the government. So this has not only effect to the financial services. So it's a very important issue.
Well, she's talking about you're not going to be able to get health care. You're not going to be able to go shopping. You're not going to be able to do anything without your digital ID. Every element of your life will be contingent on your digital ID. Now, they want us to think it's a new idea. It's not. Back in 2010, Bill Gates of hell teamed up with his buddies, and they came up with the idea that we all needed global digital IDs. Here's the partners who were behind this: the Rockefellers, Microsoft, Gavi, which is the Bill Gates front group. And I want you guys to think about this just for a minute, okay? Do you remember during COVID? You remember the people who were being debanked? Right? Now, right now, we can still take cash out, and we can still go to the store, we can still survive, we can still buy groceries, we can still pay our bills. This is what they were doing to us before they got rid of cash. What do you think they will do to you once you no longer have any options? You might remember the Canadian truckers. And it wasn't just the truckers. If you had given a donation to the truckers, they were shutting down your bank account. What do you think they will do once you have no other option, once you cannot escape the system? Okay, and by the way, that's where this is going. 2012, a whole bunch of these globalists got together and they created the Better Than Cash Alliance. It's a global partnership committed to moving from cash to digital payments. You might not be surprised to see some of the people involved: MasterCard, Visa, the United Abominations, the Clintons, and if you can't trust the Clintons, who can you trust, right? Bill and Melinda Gates of hell, the European Bank for Reconstruction, the UNICEF, UN Population Fund. Here's some of the governments that were involved. Lots of nice communist and Islamist mass murderous regimes. Nice people, these guys, right? And they're dead serious. And you might have noticed during COVID, these videos you're not going to be able to hear them, but you might have noticed during COVID, I'm sure you did, they started demonizing cash. Right? Oh, you're going to spread COVID if you use cash. Everything has to be contactless. We're going to pay with your smartphone, pay with your tap little credit card thingamajiggy. Right? Why do you think they did that? Do you think they were actually concerned about COVID? No. Not at all, right? They were moving us into the system. And the same fake news that we had in America, oh, cash is going to have COVID on it, the same fake news was broadcast all over the world. I've got news reports from a dozen countries, almost the same word-for-word report. Oh, COVID is now traveling on cash, and we have to move to contactless payments, and blah, 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 blah. Now, they're already tightening the screws here. European Union just last year put in a 7,000 euro limit on cash payments. You can't even buy a decent used car anymore using cash. I've sold things for more than 7,000 euros in cash. I sold a travel trailer for $12,000 in cash. That would be illegal under these limits. And you probably notice your dollars are worth less and less and less, like every 5 minutes. Yeah, 7,000 is not going to be a whole lot by the time they're done with this. Me and my boy have hundreds of trillions of dollars from Zimbabwe, and you can buy literally nothing. Okay, so we're not going to get into this tonight because we don't have time, but not only are they moving toward digital currency, they're moving toward a one world currency, and they've been doing it for a long time. 1988, The Economist bragged about it. Here you have Kristalina Georgieva talking about the coming global currency. The president at the time of Russia, Communist Chinese, in 2010 put out a report saying, 2009, excuse me, that, I'm sorry, it's in Spanish. I've given this talk many times in Spanish as well. But he says, we need to reform the international monetary system and get away from currencies connected to individual nations and move toward an international reserve currency. Okay, that's bad enough that the mass-murdering Chi-Coms were proposing this. Then they asked, at the Council on Foreign Relations, Timothy TurboTax Geithner. You might remember him, Treasury Secretary. Didn't pay his taxes because of TurboTax. Wouldn't it be nice if we could say that? And they asked him, hey, the Communist Chinese are proposing a single global currency. What do you guys think about that? And he says, well, you know, I haven't read the whole proposal yet, but the governor of the Central Bank of China is a really great guy. I mean, he's just a great, great guy. And so, yeah, we support that. And the dollar crashed almost immediately. Oh, no, just kidding. We don't really support that. The dollar's still going to be the reserve currency. But they let the cat out of the bag. We met Kristalina earlier. She's also bragging about how during COVID, the International Monetary Fund printed up hundreds of billions of dollars of what is already the proto-global currency. It's called special drawing rights. Okay? Just as phony as the US dollar and the Chinese renminbi, the yuan, it's just fiat currency printed out of thin air. And the IMF actually brags about what they're doing. But same thing, right? They want to take what the Federal Reserve does, create money out of nothing and buy things with it. They want to do that now at the international level to fund the global governing system that they're building. Now, in conjunction with the digital IDs and the digital currencies and the digital public infrastructure, the blockchain ledger that will keep it all, you are going to need a vaccine passport. And don't think that this died with the COVID fraud, right? They are absolutely still moving ahead with this. I've got them on video bragging about what they're doing. And you know what's interesting? 2018, the US government was funding a study on vaccine passports, years before anybody ever heard of a COVID. 2019, the European Commission proposed that by 2022, all Europeans be forced to carry a uniform vaccine passport. This was way before anybody ever heard of a COVID. How did they know we would need vaccine passports? Okay. Crazier still, I spent a lot of time in Sweden, not on purpose, but because my wife is there, so we lived there for years. And you know, Sweden was kind of like Florida, the only two jurisdictions in the world that opted out of the COVID insanity. And I figure it's just because the Swedes don't have any freedom left to steal, so they just let them sit this one out. But incredibly, as the whole world was going crazy with vaccine passports, thousands of lemmings in human bodies in Sweden went and got microchips installed in their hands to carry their little vaccine passports. Here's the CEO of the company that did them.
Implants are a very versatile technology that can be used for many different things. And right now, it's very convenient to have a COVID passport always accessible on your implant.
When Elias Brotberger goes to work, he doesn't need ID, and he doesn't need money. In fact, much of what he needs to get through the day is hidden right there, just below the surface, in his hand.
Like to touch it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, weird. Yeah, it's like a grain of rice.
Yeah, a grain of rice.
Embedded in his hand is a microchip that serves as his keys, his ID, and his wallet.
His keys, his ID, and his wallet all right on his microchip. And you're thinking, well, I'm never going to get one of those. Well, what about when you need one of those to have your central bank digital currencies so you can go do your grocery shopping? It's not going to be quite as easy to resist, is it? Here's a whistleblower from the World Economic Forum saying years ago, They're planning to put a microchip in every one of your hands, and it's going to be your ID and your wallet and your money and your vaccine passport and everything else. It's going to look like a grain of rice, and it's going to go right under your skin. Now, we met Klaus Schwab earlier, the founder and chief of the World Economic Forum. If he's Batman, this guy here is going to be Robin. His name is Yuval Noah Harari. I want you to listen to what he says. Oh, the boy got all the brownies? Hey, save me some.
Maybe in a couple of decades, when people look back, the thing they will remember from the COVID crisis is this is the moment when everything went digital. And if this was the moment when everything became monitored, that we agreed to be surveyed all the time, not just in authoritarian regimes, but even in democracies. And maybe most importantly at all, this was the moment when surveillance started going under the skin.
Surveillance going under the skin. And he said we all agree. Did you guys agree? No, I don't remember agreeing either. I must have slept through that. But remember at the very beginning, I showed you Klaus Schwab talking about his fourth industrial revolution. Okay. He wrote a whole book about it. We're going to go into it just briefly. But I want to show you how he summarizes the fourth industrial revolution in just one sentence.
It's at the end, what the fourth industrial revolution will lead to is a fusion of our physical, our digital, and our biological identities.
What the fourth industrial revolution will lead to, he says, is the fusion of our digital, our physical, and our biological identities. Okay, that's kind of creepy without even knowing what it is. I'm going to give you a little bit of insight into what he means. Here's, of course, Beijing Biden fully on board.
You've written extensively on the topic that you've asked me to speak to, mastering the fourth industrial revolution.
Joe Biden put this executive order into place on September 12th of 2017. No, 21. Here's what he said. We need to develop genetic engineering technologies and techniques to be able to write circuitry for cells and predictably program biology in the same way in which we write software for computers. That's an executive order. Yeah, who wrote that? Right, he obviously didn't write it himself. So going back to Klaus Schwab and his fourth industrial revolution, as I mentioned, he's got a book on this. You should read it. He says these technologies are not just going to stop becoming part of the world around us, they're going to become part of us. He says these things like our wearable computers, virtual reality headsets, will almost certainly become implantable in our bodies and brains. Here he is talking about, in French, talking about installing microchips in your brain. And we have a native French speaker here who can confirm that the subtitles are correct.
Aujourd'hui, au bout de ça, on parle de puces qu'on pourra s'implanter. Ce sera quand ça?
Certainement dans les 10 années à venir. Et d'abord, on va les implanter dans nos vêtements, c'est-à-dire wearables, comme on le dit. Et après, on pourrait s'imaginer qu'on les implante dans nos cerveaux ou dans notre peau. Et à la fin, peut-être il y a une communication directe entre notre cerveau et le monde digital. Ce que nous voyons, c'est une sorte de fusion du monde physique, digital et biologique.
Okay, so this is what he was saying years ago on Swiss television. Now, if you keep reading into his crazy book, he actually talks about governments might have to mandate these brain scans to make sure you're not a security threat. They got to know what's going on up here, okay? And lest you think this is some kind of terrible sci-fi novel, these technologies already exist, okay? Some of you might have heard of Elon Musk. He's actually got a thing called Neuralink. I've got all the videos, he brags about how they can read your brain waves, predict your brain waves. They can even write on your brain, he says years ago. Now, these are already implanted into the brains of many people around the world. And eventually, if they get their way, it will go everywhere. So let's go back to Yuval Noah Harari to get a sense of where they're going with all this.
We need to reinvent democracy for this new era in which humans are now hackable animals. You know, the whole idea that humans have, you know, they have this soul or spirit and they have free will and nobody knows what's happening inside me. So whatever I choose, whether in the election or whether in the supermarket, this is my free will, that's over.
That's over, okay, you hackable animals. Quit imagining that you have a spirit or a soul and free will, that you get to choose your leaders or what you want at the supermarket. That's over. Okay, you're a hackable animal. I hope we're clear. Now, they're already brainwashing your children to accept this. This is a BBC show where the little girl's becoming a transhuman, and it's just so great, and her old-fashioned troglodyte parents don't get it. The government schools, by the way, are brainwashing your children right this moment to not just accept this, but to beg for it, okay? The UN has what they call a World Core Curriculum, and it's an interesting document. The guy who wrote it, Assistant Secretary General Robert Mueller, said it should be taught to every child in every class, in every school, in every country on earth. And he admitted something very interesting in the foreword to the teacher's manual. He said it's all based on the teachings of Alice Bailey and the Tibetan teacher Javal Kul, which I know doesn't mean much to you guys. I'll give you a hint about the significance. Alice Bailey was actually the founder of the Lucifer Publishing Company. True story. It's still around today. It's called the Lucis Trust. Interesting that the World Core Curriculum that all our children need to learn from is based on the teachings of the Lucifer Publishing Company founder. Now, the Tibetan teacher is not a Tibetan or a teacher or even a human being. Alice Bailey claimed to be channeling a spirit. She described it as an ascended master, and that's where she was getting these secret revelations about how we were going to move into this new age. And so if the World Core Curriculum is based on the ravings of this lunatic and her demon friend, we ought to know what they said. Well, here's one of the things she said in her book, Education in the New Age. World citizenship should be the goal of the enlightened with a world federation and a world brain. She wrote this like 75 years ago, by the way, long before Google and personal computers and Neuralink and all the rest of it. And she says we're going to fuse Marxism and neo-scholasticism using the methods of John Dewey, the founding father of our government school system today. So now we come back to Bill Gates of hell, the guy pushing the digital currency and the digital ID and the digital public infrastructure and all the rest of the machinery for this tyranny. Well, in 2004, he went to UNESCO headquarters, that's the UN Education Agency, signed a deal with them to create global education standards, global teacher training programs, global technology to enforce it all. And then he came back and he started pouring millions and then billions of dollars into what you nice people know as Common Core. And they bragged about what Common Core was doing. Here's an ad they paid to put on your TV. This is about Common Core, right? It's going to be great. Consistent from school to school. And they match up against international standards too. So you see the slaves in Shanghai and Paris will be learning the same garbage as the ones in Chicago and Seattle and everywhere else. Do you see what they're doing here? They are preparing humanity for a global indoctrination system masquerading as an education system. And this is what it looks like. They've got brain scanners on the little slaves in communist China reporting to the government and their teachers whether they're paying attention. They're moving us rapidly now toward genetic engineering of human beings. Okay, when they say the fusion of all of this, they're really, really serious. Here's Klaus Schwab again.
You see, the difference of this fourth industrial revolution is it doesn't change what you are doing. It changes you. If you take genetic editing, just as an example, it's you who are changed.
If you take genetic editing, it's you who are changed, right? The fourth industrial revolution doesn't just change what you're doing, it changes you. If you upgrade your genetics, for example, and Bill Gates is really very proud of this.
One final way that's new and is promising is called the RNA vaccine. With RNA and DNA, instead of putting that shape in, you put instructions in the code to make that shape.
And I know what you're thinking. I'm not taking one of those things. Yeah, I'm not either. But what happens when your digital currency and your digital ID and your vaccine passport and your ability to buy and sell all depends on what are they on now? The 18th booster now, 19th booster, right? And again, after COVID, it'll be the next thing, right? Even if you got all your COVID boosters, which I don't imagine you guys are still getting them. But they're going to come back and back and back and back and back and back. Okay? And soon there will be more requirements. We're going to skip a lot of this in the interest of time. But I want you to see, this is from the chief of science over at Moderna. Listen to the technology that they are already using. This is the same technology that was in their mRNA shots.
As I've trained as a physician scientist, we've been living this phenomenal digital and scientific revolution. And I'm here today to tell you that we're actually hacking the software of life and that it's changing the way we think about prevention and treatment of disease. So here's all the biology you need to know in 30 seconds. Our body is made out of organs. Our organs are made out of cells. And in every cell, there's this thing called messenger RNA, or mRNA for short, that transmits the critical information from the DNA, our genes, to the protein, which is really the stuff we're all made out of. This is the critical information that determines what a cell will actually do. And so we think of it like an operating system. And it's not just in every cell of our body, it's actually in every cell of every organism alive. It's the same thing.
We're going to hack the operating system of life. And by the way, notice this is in the past tense. They already know how to do this. This is the great Dr. Peter McCullough on my show about 2 years ago talking about what the latest research was showing on the COVID shots. And I don't show this to scare you, just so that you know.
There's been a paper published from Malmö, Sweden, senior author is Yang D. Morenis, that showed that the genetic code for Pfizer gets installed into the human nucleus of the hepatoma cell line very rapidly, within a few hours. And experts believe the entire code is actually installed into the human genome. This paper has not been challenged by any other lab. We're looking for confirmation, but this is disturbing now, since the messenger RNA for Pfizer, in a study done by Stanford, by Rolkin and colleagues, is permanently in the lymph nodes, at least as far as they've looked for several months now. So the genetic code, once people take these vaccines, is long-lasting. It may indeed get into the nucleus, change the human genome, and then pass down to daughter cells. That means that this could actually be passed down to the progeny of vaccinated young parents. There couldn't be worse news right now. We are hoping this vaccine would be in and out of the body. It looks like it's long-lasting, causing a tremendous amount of damage.
Yeah, when I say they can already edit your genetic code, by the way, God wrote your genetic code. It's not a science fiction project for the future. It's here now. They're already doing it. They've already done it, and they intend to continue. They're creating babies out of DNA from 3 people. They're creating human mice by fusing human DNA with mouse DNA. And they eventually have some really significant goals. So here's the chief of engineering at Google, Ray Kurzweil, big transhumanist.
So does God exist? Well, I would say no.
Not yet. Okay, we're working on it. Now, Yuval Noah Harari published an interesting book just a couple years ago called Homo Deus. And what he argues is that mankind is now evolving beyond Homo sapiens. We are going to become Homo Deus, man-gods, God-men. Okay? We're already doing this. Here he is making fun of Jesus.
I mean, all this story about Jesus rising from the dead and being the Son of God, this is fake news.
Wait, it's fake news. Okay? Here's the real news.
Now humans are developing even bigger powers than ever before. We are really acquiring divine powers of creation and destruction. We are really upgrading humans into gods.
Upgrading humans into gods. We're going to live forever by fusing ourselves with AI and computers through our biological and digital convergence with the 4th Industrial Revolution. I mean, it sounds crazy, right? But you might be noticing a pattern here. It's actually literally the oldest lie in the book, right? You remember what Satan said in Genesis chapter 3? Oh, you won't surely die. You shall be as gods, right? You're not going to die. You just got to upload your content. It's the same lie from the Garden of Eden. You're going to live forever and you're going to be as God. Total baloney. Not going to happen now. Didn't happen then. Worked out really bad. He actually takes it a step further. You know, I like to say Satan's not all that creative. Yuval Noah Harari takes it one step further.
Because even if you believe the Bible, the only thing God managed to create are organic beings. All these trees and giraffes and humans, they are just organic. But we are now trying to create inorganic entities, inorganic life forms, cyborgs, artificial intelligence, and so forth. If we succeed, and there is a very good chance we will, then very soon we will be beyond the God of the Bible.
We'll be beyond the God of the Bible. Right? Talk about pride, right? So we're going to skip a lot of this just in the interest of time. But they do plan. I mentioned that they were using China as kind of like the pilot program. You might recognize this guy here. Puts more money into our political process than any other person in the world. Listen to him.
So I think you need a new world order, that China has to be part of the process of creating it, and they have to buy in. They have to own it the same way as, let's say, the United States owns the Washington Consensus, the current order.
All right, so the most murderous dictatorship in the history of humanity should own the New World Order in the same way that the United States owned the last one, okay? David Rockefeller thinks that's a great idea, so does Klaus Schwab.
I respect China's achievements, which are tremendous over the last over 40 years since the opening up and policy and reform policy came into action. I think it's a role model for many countries.
Respect China's achievements. It's a role model. That's what he says. Okay. So we're going to wrap up here in just a few minutes. I want to just share some thoughts on how to think about this and what to do about it. But first, you might be wondering, like, well, why isn't this on my TV? Why isn't this on the front page of my local newspaper? What's going on here? Well, the main reason is because they're lying to you. They're not doing journalism. They're literally reading a script.
Become all too common on social media.
More alarmingly, some media outlets publish things they think are true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 This is extremely dangerous.
Yeah, anyways, it goes on and on. Hundreds of these same people reading the same exact script. So who's writing the script? Right? What's going on here? Some of you might recognize this guy, Walter Cronkite, America's newsman. Here he is getting his Globalist of the Year award.
Their leader, Pat Robertson, has written in a book a few years ago that we should have a world government, but only when the Messiah arrives. He wrote, and literally, any attempt to achieve world order before that time must be the work of the devil. Well, join me. I'm glad to sit here at the right hand of Satan.
Glad to sit at the right hand of Satan, okay? Here Hillary Clinton congratulates him. Now, if we'd read our Bibles, we would know this, right? The Bible actually, the Apostle Paul in 2 Corinthians describes Satan as the god of this world. 1 John 5 describes the whole world as being in the power of the evil one. So this is actually, the facts line up with what the Bible teaches on the nature of reality. 3,000 years ago, King David wrote, I believe prophetically in Psalm 2, that the kings of the earth and the rulers were conspiring together against the Lord and his anointed one. That's interesting. And you can imagine God thinking that the kings, the rulers are conspiring against him. Oh, terrifying, right? No. Okay. God laughs at them, it says in verse 4. The next verse, in verse 5, it says he's about to speak to them in his wrath, so that's not going to work out well for them. Some of you might have had Revelation 13 come to mind. And I'm not saying that that's what this central bank digital currency is, but it's hard to ignore the parallel, right? This beast antichrist system will cause everyone, poor and rich, great and small, to receive a mark in their right hand or their forehead so that you can't buy or sell without getting it. You know, and think, 2,000 years ago, this must have sounded completely and utterly preposterous. Right? I mean, they didn't even know what the whole world was yet. And yet somehow we're expected to believe that every last person on the planet is going to be forced to get a mark. You better buy or sell. Weird. Okay, now don't be scared. God didn't give you a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Okay, so we must not be afraid of these clowns. It is ultimately a spiritual battle. But a couple things on what to do with this central bank digital currency stuff before we wrap up here. For one, I would recommend, in the strongest possible terms, use cash as much as you can. The more you use cash, the harder it will be for them. And I know you get your little reward points and your cash back and your frequent flyer mile. I know, it's convenient, you don't got, I know, okay? If we go along with it, it will get here quickly. And you don't want that for you and your children. I would recommend being prepared, right? We all saw how quickly things turned south during COVID, right? Freedoms that we didn't even realize were freedoms suddenly were taken from us. We couldn't go to work. We couldn't go visit grandma while she's dying at the hospital, right? We have to fight for those freedoms? Yeah, you're going to have to fight for those freedoms too. So get ready, because they're going to do it again as soon as they can. And it may look different. It may be an economic collapse. It may be what the World Economic Forum calls a polycrisis, the polycrisis of doom. Lots of crises hitting you at the same time. It helps to have multiple income streams. Right? If you're working for like some big corporation or some government, and they say, if you won't get your 15 boosters, you're not going to be able to work here anymore. Well, if you got 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 other income streams, that's not that big of a threat. If you depend on that to feed your children, you're in trouble. I would recommend getting together with a local community of people. I mean, you guys are doing that here, praise the Lord. Get involved in a church, a homeschool co-op. I mean, there's all kinds of groups we should get involved with. Lots of efforts in Congress. In fact, I've interviewed a bunch of the members of Congress who are working to stop this, and I'm very grateful for their efforts. Unfortunately, they just are kind of creating a CBDC by the back door now by trying to nationalize and control the cryptocurrencies, the Stable Act, the Genius Act. So this agenda is still marching forward, even under our noses right now. But it's good that there's efforts in Congress to stop it. Most Americans do not support this, by the way. They did a poll, only 16% of Americans wanted a CBDC. So this is not because Americans want this that they're doing it. It's because they want to enslave us that they're doing it. We got to stop using the big tech companies. Cut Google completely out of your life. They're more evil than you could possibly imagine. They have every search you've ever done is recorded in their databases. And through AI, they know more about you than you know. They know where you're going to eat dinner before you do. Stop using them. Okay? Get involved in public office. If you can't run for office, support somebody running for office. If you don't have money, knock on doors for them. If you can't knock on doors for them, write them a check. We've got to have honest, God-fearing men and women in political office, or we're going to be slaves before we know it. Okay? In South Dakota, they did an excellent veto of a bill that would have brought in central bank digital currency in South Dakota. The governor very wisely vetoed that. In my state of Florida, and I'm proud I played a little role in this, we have actually officially banned central bank digital currency. It is illegal, praise the Lord. I know Michigan's not quite Florida, but you guys can get there. Try, right? Keep trying. I was very grateful for our governor. He said the central bank digital currency is about surveilling Americans and controlling Americans. You're opening up a can of worms. We're not going to do it here in Florida. A lot of states, including my home state of Florida, and I was involved in this as well, have moved to make gold and silver currency. In Florida today, the governor, I was there when he signed it, signed a law. Gold and silver are now money in the state of Florida, and they are treated as money. The faster we have an alternative option, the better off we will all be. Okay? Texas has a gold bullion depository. I will recommend, again, that you get informed. One of the key tools they're using is keeping us in ignorance. So I serve as senior editor of the New American Magazine. You can sign up for my newsletter for free. It's at libertysentinel.org. Annette mentioned that. I write for the Epoch Times. I had a big article in there this morning about how the UN's coming for homeschooling. I've got a couple copies of my book here if you want to know who's behind all this. Obviously, Satan is their commander-in-chief. But protect your children, guys. Again, they're brainwashing your kids to embrace this system. We have to deal with this. If we don't protect our children, the next generation is not just going to submit to this. They're going to beg for it. And I mean that in the most serious sense possible. That's not my family. It's a picture of them missing the baby. But, you know, they have their great reset, right? If you're a Christian, we have the Great Commission. Those are the instructions God gave us. He said, go make disciples of all nations, baptize them in the name of the Father, in the name of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, and teach them to what? Obey or observe all that I have commanded you. There's a lot of encouragement in the Scriptures. If you read Judges chapter 7, because I know somebody like, oh, we're a minority. What are we going to do? We're not going to be able to hold back these people. Well, God doesn't often use majorities to accomplish incredible things. Judges chapter 7, you have the story of Gideon, the smallest guy from the smallest tribe. And God's like, you're going to lead this fight against the Midianites. And he says, oh, no, God, you must have the wrong guy. Me? He raises up an army of 30,000. God says, your army's way too big. Please, send the cowards home. First of all, 20,000+ go home. And he says, you still got too many. What? We're like down to like 10,000 people. He said, go down, drink at the river, and then send everybody else home. He ends up with 300 guys. And they win. You know why God whittled the army down to just 300? It was so they wouldn't think that they did it on their own, right? God won the victory for them, and God will win the victory for us. Think about David, right? Taking on Goliath. There are so many incredible stories. Here in 2 Kings, God dispatches one angel to slaughter 185,000 enemy troops. And you think he can't deal with George Soros and Bill Gates? I mean, come on, right? God's got it all under control. As Paul says in Romans 16, the God of peace will soon crush Satan under your feet. That was true then, right? As the gospel spread through Europe, the paganism, the infanticide, the slavery, all of it started coming crashing down. It can happen again now. God will crush Satan. He's already victorious, and that's all we have, guys. So thank you. And Annette, I don't know if you want to do questions, but all right.
So we do have some time for some questions if you're open to that. And then
Sure.
I was also thinking, there's a summary of the actions that you said we could take. If you send me those slides, I can kind of summarize them and get them out to everybody.
Absolutely, yep.
That would be wonderful. Not all of them, but whatever you think is relevant for us to follow up on. So anybody have some questions for Alex? I can come over with the microphone.
Gabriel, save me a brownie, please.
You mentioned stablecoin and cryptocurrencies one time. So this is all leading into what you're proposing here?
That's a very good question. There's thousands, maybe more cryptocurrencies. And first of all, full disclosure, I am invested in cryptocurrency. I started buying Bitcoin in 2011 when it was like less than $1 a piece. Most of those were stolen. I would have flown here in a private jet if that hadn't happened. So I'd have hundreds of millions of dollars, but that's okay. With all that out of the way, I do believe that the narrative behind Bitcoin, that it was created as an alternative to this collapsing slave monetary system that they've built, is true. Unfortunately, the same evildoers who run the collapsing slave system that they want us all to use are now in the process of hijacking Bitcoin and the others. And that's not just my opinion. The guy who's often described as Bitcoin Jesus, which I think is a little bit blasphemous, but Roger Ver, one of the early investors, one of the main promoters for years and years of this, he's sitting in a jail cell in Spain right now on orders from the US government, from the Biden regime. And he just published a book less than a year ago called Hijacking Bitcoin, where he explains the mechanics of how they're taking Bitcoin and basically plugging it into this global digital slave system that they're building. And part of this is happening through congressional action. The Stable Act and the Genius Act are requiring what they call KYC, Know Your Customer. I mean, the great thing about Bitcoin, the whole purpose of Bitcoin, was that you could transact without asking anybody for permission, a bank, a central bank, a government, and it was completely anonymous. Nobody was supposed to know who owned it and who it was going to and how it was going and all that. That's what made it great. Under these new bills that have already passed, by the way, that's no longer possible. If you try to purchase, you can try it right now. Go to any of the crypto exchanges, try to buy some Bitcoin, upload your ID, give us your social security number, tell us everything about you. What's your mother's maiden name, right? They've completely defeated the purpose of these cryptocurrencies. So I'm not saying buy or don't buy them. I'm saying that their usefulness as a tool to bypass the slave system that they're building is rapidly eroding.
Hold on a second.
Microsoft has a patent that ends in 06060.
WO0606, yep.
Is there what is that, and is there any significance to the number?
Yeah, so Microsoft actually filed for this patent back in 2020, and when I first heard of it, I said, that's ridiculous, stop making stuff up. So I went over to WIPO, that's the World Intellectual Property Organization. I have a long and troubled relationship with them, and I looked in their files, and sure enough, there it was. Microsoft's patent on a cryptocurrency system that allocates cryptocurrency to the citizens based on how compliant they are, based on their body activity. So if you're doing what you're supposed to, you get your slave tokens. If you're not, you don't. I don't know whether there's significance to the numbers, although they're certainly very interesting. It'd be a very interesting coincidence. 060606, yeah, I think I remember reading something about that in the Bible. But no, this is part of the architecture that they are building. They are talking, you can see it how they do it with the Amazon employees right now. Right now it's not implanted under your skin, it's on your uniform, but you've got a little RFID tracker and the system knows where you are every millisecond of the day. Oh, you spent too long in the bathroom. Oh, you were standing in the corner for too long. Your cigarette break was it. So that's the system we're moving toward. And Microsoft is obviously a major part of this. So,
hold on, we'll come over right here. What's the position of the current administration and Donald Trump around this? Do you have any thoughts on that, or?
I'll start by saying I don't trust Scott Bessent as far as I can throw him. Okay, the Treasury Secretary. He was one of the bigwigs at Soros Fund Management. Yes. He's an active homosexual married to a guy. Somehow they got some children. He's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. In my opinion, the most nefarious organization that has a website on our soil. So I don't trust Scott Bessent as far as I can throw him. Now, Trump has been clear. CBDCs are bad. We're not doing them. In fact, he put out an order saying all the work on these CBDCs is done during my administration. So best case scenario, I say we have a 3.5-year reprieve. We'll see what happens in 2028. I don't believe Trump supports this. I believe he's sincere when he says that this is evil and we need to stop it. I don't know that he understands it as well as I wish he did. And I wish he had found somebody better to be Treasury Secretary, because they're trying to engineer a financial cataclysm, the likes of which we've never seen in our lifetime. And Scott Bessent is probably the single worst guy on the planet to handle it. So I hope Trump has some kind of good trick up his sleeve.
Hold on. Oh, is Scott Bessent a former demo?
Former Democrat? Absolutely, yeah.
That's what I thought. Okay, one last thing. How about Tom Steyer, Warren Buffett, and what's his face, Larry Fink of BlackRock? Are they all part of this?
I can't speak about all of them. Larry Fink is a critical part of this. He's on the board of the Council on Foreign Relations, which I just mentioned. He's also the new co-chair of the World Economic Forum, now that Klaus Schwab has been wheeled off stage left. He also runs BlackRock, manages the largest amount of assets of any institution in the world, over $10 trillion that they acknowledge, plus through their supercomputer Aladdin, tens of trillions more, probably managing some of your pensions and retirement funds, okay? And even if you think they're not, you're probably invested in some of their ETFs. I mean, they are everywhere. You wonder, why are all the American companies going woke, even though they know it means going broke? It's because BlackRock owns the biggest stake in the company, and BlackRock's saying, we're gonna remove you from the board if you don't do this stuff. So Larry Fink is a big part of this. His role is basically to bring the economic giants, really the big companies of the world, to the table to participate. And he's doing a very good job from their perspective. Warren Buffett, I don't know where he's at. I mean, I don't know these guys personally. My guess is he's clearly going along to get along, if nothing else. I mean, he's not speaking out about it. He's not actively resisting it. And you asked about a few others. Oh, Tom Steyer. Yeah, I don't know enough about him to be able to comment responsibly. But a lot, I mean, essentially, if you're a multi-billionaire and you're not actively fighting against this, I think it's a safe bet to assume that you're at least complicit. And even some of the billionaires who are, at least on the surface, resisting some of this, I think ought to be scrutinized more carefully. But we do have some good billionaires on our side, too.
And a question and a comment. I remember a couple of years ago, Patrick Bernstein, like, blockchain was horrible, and at that time, and I can't remember who was interviewing him, but they were talking about blockchain, and he's, you know, they're like, but no one will be able to, you know, it's totally anonymous, blah, blah, blah. He goes, are you kidding me? It is like the perfect way, like, they'll know everything through blockchain.
Yeah, so blockchain does keep a permanent record of everything that is not possible to change. And I use those terms fully cognizant of the significance of those terms, right? Not possible is a tall order. Once it's on the blockchain, there are computers around the world that are part of the network that have that data recorded, and so changing them becomes as close to impossible as it gets. That means all this will be recorded forever. Your preferences, where you're tithing, all of this stuff. So when it comes to technology, you know, I'm not a Luddite. I use a flip phone, believe it or not. I just drew the line there. You know, wherever you guys decide to draw it is fine too. I'm not a Luddite. I believe technology can be good. I believe it can also be evil. And it just think of like a firearm, right? A firearm in the hands of a madman could be used to slaughter innocent people. A firearm in the hands of a good guy, a police officer, a soldier, a decent human being, could be used to protect innocent women and children. So I'm not against blockchain technology. I'm not against digital currency per se. I'm not against artificial intelligence. Just the problem is who's using it and for what purpose. Right now, the people developing these technologies and the people using these technologies are wicked, and they're using it for evil purposes. And so I think they need to be restrained.
Okay, we're going to take a couple more questions, and then I want you to kind of share with what you got over there with us.
Oh, okay, cool.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a question?
Actually, I was just wondering, is there anyone else in the administration that's sort of savvy like you are that could actually sort of give a little bit of guidance? And then also, what do you think about Bill Gates sitting next to Melania?
There are some really good people in the administration, some of whom I know personally and love dearly, and I'm grateful for that. There are also some really bad people. I mentioned Bessent, and I could give a whole list of really bad people. Howard Lutnick's another guy. What is he doing there, right? big-time Democrat donor. So, but there are good people there. I'm grateful for that. Trump relies a lot on General Michael Flynn, who's a friend. He's a great American who gets this, I think, better than most people. So yeah, there are some really good people in the Trump administration, and I'm grateful for that. You know, people keep saying, well, he's playing 5D chess. I hope so. I hope so.
Okay, one more question here.
We all know that Wikipedia is a leftist rewrite of history. Why haven't conservatives developed and implemented a conservative version of Wikipedia?
My friend Larry Sanger, who is the co-founder of Wikipedia, is working on it right now. It's called the Knowledge Standards Foundation, KSF, and they're taking data from all the best encyclopedias in the world, curating it, making it available at the click of a button. So I'm hoping that will end Wikipedia's monopoly. But the problem is the evildoers who want to feed bad information into the AI so that the AI does what they want it to do depend on feeding bad information to the AI. So it's going to become increasingly difficult to have good information broadly accessible. So it's a challenge, but if anybody can do it, Larry Sanger can, and I'd recommend checking him out. By the way, he recently announced that he became a Christian. He's been on my show quite a few times. He's really a great guy who understands this technology better than just about anybody I can think of. And one of the last times I had him on my show to discuss Wikipedia, he said, oh, it's really interesting. A lot of the people changing the Wikipedia pages work in Langley, Virginia. That's where CIA headquarters is. So, and I noticed a funny little thing. The last time we had a government shutdown, I can't remember when it was, but some years ago, I noticed that all of a sudden you could change Wikipedia articles and they weren't getting instantly changed back. I think because the bureaucrats were at home instead of sitting at a government computer playing with Wikipedia, suddenly we got some truth in there. So.
And I know you've been eyeing the brownies sitting here and you've been dying.
I can hold off on the brownies as long as needed.
So tell us a little bit about what are the things you brought over here so people have an idea, because I think some of the things you might have, people might be very interested in.
Well, thank you. You're very kind. And I didn't pay her for that, by the way. But a couple things. This is my newest book. It's called Indoctrinating Our Children to Death, Government Schools' War on Faith, Family, and Freedom. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth says you need to get a copy of this. So does Michael Flynn and a lot of others. It's essentially the history of how the government took over our education system and what they are doing and where it's all going. I gave you a little sneak preview with the UN comments. So all that's in there. Deep State, The Invisible Government Behind the Scenes is a book I published a few years ago, kind of looking at the different secret societies, conferences, organizations that are involved in pushing this and then putting it into kind of a biblical perspective. You know, what does the Bible teach on these things? This is a little bit older book. This one I published almost 10 years ago with Dr. Sam Blumenfeld, and of course it was endorsed by Phyllis Schlafly and Congressman Ron Paul, a bunch of great Americans. It's about how they turned Americans into illiterates. So they did it deliberately. We can prove it. We argue in this book that these are actually criminal offenses and that these people should be prosecuted. And then I've got a few different DVDs and some resources in Spanish, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So, oh, and a flyer here. We got some free flyers if you want. You can find out about my newsletter, Classical Conversations, which is where I have my children enrolled for home education. Great program. I serve as a senior fellow there. And so you can get it's just free resources for anybody who needs them. So.
Oh my God. Alex, thank you.
Well, thank you.
For all the way out here
It's an honor. Thank you.
to Michigan.